Hey guys, my name is Nathan, also known as the Survivor Buff, and I'm here to talk to you guys about episode 3 of Survivor 50. So far, I think we're 3 for 3 with episodes. I think it was an awesome episode. I think this season is amazing so far, and we're on a good trajectory. Before we get into the details of episode 3, I want to talk to you guys about something with episodes 1 and 2. I noticed a musical motif that played in one part of episode 1 and one part of episode 2. The first time the motif plays is behind when Kyle is back at camp after he gets hurt at the immunity challenge. It plays this weird, distorted, offbeat song that really catches your attention because it's so out of left field. But then I remembered something Jeff Probst was talking about on the On Fire podcast in the last few seasons, that sound design is extremely important to Survivor as a whole, and it always has been. So I was like, oh, if it stood out to me that much, maybe I should make a mental note of it. And sure enough, in episode 2, when Christian finds the Billie Eilish Boomerang idol, they play like a triumphant version of the song. So it seems like whenever that theme plays, something important is happening on screen. But instead of just telling you guys about it, I'm gonna play the clips back to back. I might get copyright claimed for it, but I don't really care because I only have 5 subscribers. Hey guys. So here's the song that plays when it's showing Kyle back at camp. Very strange. And then here is Christian finding the Billie Eilish Boomerang idol. This one's a little quieter, so you gotta listen closely.
Joe and Rick, it's gonna go on.
So keep your ear out for more of that theme moving forward. One more thing about episode 2. Apparently, Savannah forgot she had the shot in the dark. That's pretty inexcusable in season 50. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I think it also kind of gives evidence that maybe we shouldn't be bringing people back 9 days after they played their first time. Maybe they could use some rest, and they won't forget about something that could help them win $1 million. Okay, we begin the episode at the Sela camp after they come back from tribal council, and Cerie's asking Christian if he's okay after the fall. I thought that was pretty funny. Christian really sold that fall. People were like genuinely worried about him. I thought it was funny that Rick said in confessional that he didn't even know Christian was gonna fall. Christian did that of his own volition, which good for him, I guess. And then Christian has a confessional that I think is pretty meaningful, where he was like, it's perfect, it was perfect. And then he says, what a test of our little duo, and there's like a music sting after it. And then he goes back to saying, my son's going to see this. And that's like everything a winner's edit needs in one confessional. He's saying his plan went perfectly. He's saying the test between his little duo with Rick Devens went successfully, so they're even closer than ever now. And he goes back to something personal about how his son is going to see this in the future, which is a callback to episode 1 already. It's just too good. I don't know. It seems too obvious that he's going to win. We got the full intro for the first time, which was pretty cool. I wasn't expecting that. I think it looks good. I didn't even realize that we hadn't seen it up to this point. Then we get the start of the drama of the episode where Christian and Rick decide to tell Cerie about the Billie Eilish Boomerang idol. And they come up with this plan to make Christian pretend to be surprised and Rick is the one that actually found it. I thought it was a pretty good plan. Something interesting that stood out to me about this scene is that they didn't play it as if Rick and Christian were like getting one over on Cerie. They never framed it in a way that Cerie was looking foolish. The edit just kind of showed Cerie being really happy about it and how it locks her in more with them. Literally my dream alliance, by the way, so this is amazing. Rob Has a Podcast made a good point that Cerie was probably so happy and didn't question it that much because Aubrey's the one that got the idol and she has a connection with Aubrey from Game Changers. At the end of the scene, we get the confessional with Christian saying they didn't have time to tell Emily. Uh-oh. And then, at the Matt chat, Jeff decides to do a rap. Genuinely, I don't remember any of the lyrics of the rap, except that he ends with drop your buffs, because it was traumatizing for me. I just blacked it all out the second it was over. I pretended like it didn't happen. This brings me to something that is a little worrisome for me about the future of Survivor. There's a lot of Survivor fans that are also Big Brother fans, you know? Big Brother fans know what I'm talking about when I say this. You know how people you know will like stop talking to you if you show them Big Brother too soon? Well, every time Jeff raps or we get a fried chicken and waffles song, Survivor gets closer to becoming a show that I'm embarrassed to tell people that I watch. And I really don't want to get there, because right now, we're not there. So, let's just quit while we're ahead. No more songs, unless it's Chris Noble and we're laughing at him. Everybody drops their buffs. Christian quickly says to Emily that Aubrey has an idol. We gifted it to her on that tribe, and Emily's like, okay, wait, what? And then Christian says, Aubrey has an idol, we just found it last night. Okay, I understand why Emily's suspicious. It does seem like Christian kind of just dropped this on her and was not telling her on purpose for a little bit, but I think I would at least have a conversation with Christian before I just threw his information to the enemies. That's just me, though. We got a funny moment when Charlie was saying he was pissed at the fans, and then Christian was like, did you vote for swap? He was like, yeah. We get our Survivor 50 swap tribes. Pretty interesting tribe splits. We have the David versus Goliath 3 all on Vatu together. We get over to the new Kahlo camp, and we get Joe explaining the tribe just like he did for the original Sela camp. I think Joe is not long for this world, because Q going home this episode showed me something that I always miss in these early episodes of Survivor. I see people getting a decent amount of screen time, and I'm like, oh, that's a good thing, they're developing a story for them. And then they go out in episodes like 3 or 4. The trap I fall into is I wait for them to get a story developed, but by the time there's a hint of that happening, they get voted out that episode. And I feel like that happened with Q. We got a lot of Q in episodes 1 and 2, and then he was pretty quiet this episode until we get to the scrambling portion of the episode. We got a lot of Q, but it was kind of just Q existing in Survivor. There wasn't a ton about his plan moving forward or who he was building strong alliances with. Realizing that made me a little bit worried for Christian, but Christian's had so much content that I feel like it'd be crazy if he goes out in episode 5 or something, you know? I also think I might be wrong about Rizgod. After that scene with Charlie, we'll get to it, but after that scene with Charlie, I don't know if I see him as a losing finalist anymore. I was kind of expecting this episode to be the episode his edit died down, and it did not, so I think he might be a pre-merger after all. Joe says during the pregame he was looking for Coach and Colby because they have good core values. Yawn. Then they show Colby getting dog walked by Coach. Yay! Colby said he has no issue with Coach about it, but I don't know. I bet Colby didn't appreciate it being shown again. Coach tells Joe that he's the reason that Coach is back on Survivor, and Coach says in confessional that Joe has magnificently set the table for pillars that I believe in, honor and integrity. How are we back here again in season 50? Then we get a painful scene with Coach basically telling Chrissy that she's annoying and should stop talking. Coach is like, hey, let me tell you, bring it down, you know? And then Chrissy's like, go hang out with them? Wait, I feel good. And then he goes, no, I know you feel good. He's like, that's the problem. He says you just constantly chit. They'd start getting annoyed. And oh man, that'd be so hard to hear. I feel so bad for her. She was like, oh my God, okay, like if that many people think that about me, like I need to change something. And that's why I think she's a pretty good Survivor player. I saw people online talking about how this was a parallel between Tyson and Coach in Heroes vs. Villains. For those that don't remember, back in Survivor Heroes vs. Villains, Tyson had a talk with Coach, basically telling him to stop being himself and that it's annoying everybody and that nobody believes his stories and that if he wants any chance in this game, he has to just drop all that stuff. Coach is basically having that same conversation with Chrissy. I think that adds another layer of sting to Chrissy, the fact that it's Benjamin Coach Wade giving her this advice. Chrissy then had a good talk with Genevieve and Aubrey about everything, and I think that really snapped her out of it. As much as it hurt for Chrissy to hear, I think this is exactly what she needed for her game and for her edit. She literally says, perhaps this information from Coach was the perfect timing for me to change up my game. First of all, it was the last thing said in the scene, which is something they always want the audience to remember. And the second is that the phrase, change up my game, is super important for her to even have a chance of going on to do something good in this season. Because the edit they've shown of her so far makes her look like a buffoon. So they really have to tell the audience, hey, this is switching, start taking Chrissy seriously. Over on the Sela tribe, Sari says Riz God in confessional, which made me laugh. Rizzo says he met Sari when he was 18 at a fan event. We get a scene of Jonathan and Dee saying they love Sari and that that's a bad thing. I personally don't think this tribe is going to go to tribal before merge. Jonathan says in this scene, if we let Sari get to the merge, we're all in trouble. I don't think this tribe's going to lose, so I don't think Dee's ever going to get the chance to blindside Sari. I'm cautious about it, but I think this is just great secondhand visibility for Sari, saying how big of a threat she is. Also, it's probably worth noting, Dee says that subtitled, blindsided and being like, damn, I should have taken her out. I feel like that could happen. And I hope that happens, because I'm rooting for Sarit. Over on the new Vatu tribe, Mike is the only original Kalo. Mike says that he knows Ozzy because Ozzy was a manager at a restaurant that he used to go to and that they developed a friendship. Of course he knows Ozzy. Mike White knows everybody on this planet. We are reminded that Q doesn't have a vote, and Q goes on to share the Billie Eilish Boomerang Idol information with Ozzy. I think that was a pretty good move to build some trust. Angelina keeps getting negative secondhand visibility, but a lot of it's from Q. Q says Angelina does the least in challenges, the least around camp, but she has the most to say. Now we get into the most talked about part of the episode, where Emily has one conversation with Ozzy and Q and decides that it's such a good conversation that she needs to jump ship from Christian and tell them about Aubrey's idol. Q does not like this person. Even when they're making their alliance, Emily's like excited and fist bumping him a few times, and Q is not even looking at her, can't even pretend to like her. I've been trying to think of why Emily did this. One theory that I have is that she was spooked by Christian telling her this information right before the tribe swap. So I think it's possible that she immediately told Q and Ozzy to dismantle some power from Christian because she was threatened by him seeming like he might be a bit further ahead in the information game than her. So she was like, okay, let's just start from square one. Let's just tell everyone everything and start over. I mean, it worked out for her for now, except Christian being upset with her. My other thought to that theory, though, is, but he's your ally. Why would you try to dismantle power from your ally? When I watched this episode live, up to this point, I thought Christian was on another tribe. So I was like, oh man, this might be really bad for Christian moving forward. Like, I hope this doesn't bite him in the butt later. And then I was like, wait, he's here? Wait, he's on her tribe? Why would she do this? It's very funny when Ozzy attempts to keep up with the people around him in terms of strategy. Emily tells them about Aubrey's idol, and she immediately says, keep it on the DL. And then before the conversation's over, Ozzy goes, let's keep that to ourselves? Can we tell Christian? And then Q is immediately like, no. We've been over this. I think Emily doing this is especially bad for Aubrey. Q says, we suspected that on the old Vatu tribe, that Aubrey had an idol. So basically everything I said last episode about how great this was for Aubrey with the timing of her getting the baby is just out the window, because Emily told them. Q then immediately goes and tells Stephanie that Aubrey has an idol. By the way, I'm not just saying that Q doesn't like Emily. He literally says in confessional, as long as it's not Stephanie or Ozzy, I guess I'll throw Emily in with us too because I need her vote. We get the first and last iconic cancel Christmas line from Q in this scene. Emily then sobers up and notices that Q and Stephanie are kind of driving the conversation and she's just there for the ride, and she doesn't like that very much. She doesn't think that Q and Stephanie actually want to work with her. Shocker. So Emily goes and talks with Angelina. I think it's always interesting when we get people's opinions about where they thought the votes were going to go on their original tribe, because Angelina says that she thinks it would have been Rizzo and then Genevieve on her original tribe, which we know isn't true. Angelina seemed genuinely shocked that Q and Stephanie said to not trust her. She's like, me? She then calls it the most intense first conversation she's ever had with somebody. I think Angelina is another example of somebody who needed a bit of a wake-up call in order to get her game where it needs to be. Rob has a podcast this past week, did a live show, and on it, I believe it was John Lovett, brought up the concept of playing Survivor versus performative Survivor. We haven't had a returning player season since season 40, but John Lovett was basically saying that people playing Survivor for the first time are playing more of a performative Survivor because they kind of have to pretend that they're not playing Survivor and then play Survivor behind the scenes with the people that they trust. Returning player seasons, especially ones that are landmark seasons like season 50, everybody knows that everybody's playing the game and that everybody's aware of the game. So you can kind of skip that initial stage of pretending to play the game. I didn't really understand what people were saying when they were hating on the new era and how different it is from the old era, but I kind of understand it after hearing the concept of performative Survivor. Sorry to bring up 48 again, but 48 was dominated by performative Survivor, and people like Kyle and Camilla were a secret duo that had like 30-second conversations with each other because if they were seen having longer conversations, they'd be pegged as a strategist. And that's why it was so frustrating to watch, because everybody was playing performative Survivor, and some people thought that was the actual game, like Mitch and Star, and that made us even more frustrated with those people. And that brings me to something that Emily said in her pre-game press. She said in her pre-game interview with Mike Bloom, quote, "I don't love the note that I left 45 on." She said that one of her last confessionals, she talked about how she learned to be a, quote, softer person, and that she disliked that she used the word softer. She hated the idea that she had to change who you are in order to do well. She said she doesn't love the lesson that she left people with. I thought that was really interesting, because that's not the message that I got from Emily's story, but I understand why she feels that way. And it made me think about the difference between actually playing Survivor and performative Survivor. In the first couple episodes of Survivor 45, Emily's tribe basically told her that her way of playing is not going to work and she has to do XYZ in order to fit in better, in order to make people comfortable, whatever. And I think she was taught, mainly by Caleb and Sabaya, how to play performative Survivor, which was the meta at the time, because this was Survivor 45, smack dab in the middle of the new era when it was super important to know how to play performative Survivor. And I think Emily's initial instincts about the game work a lot better on a returnee player season, because like Angelina said, she's very blunt to the point, and that's just how Emily is. Emily is not bad at these types of games by any means, by the way. She plays this game called Blood on the Clock Tower with a bunch of the RHAP people. It's basically like a mafia type game where you have to figure out who's what role. And apparently she is known for how chaotic she acts in that game, and she has the highest win rate of any of them. So I think Emily had a really good read in the preseason here that I don't want to play the way that everyone told me was the right way to play. I want to adapt my style of gameplay to play in the way that works best for me. I think this relates to people like Chrissy and Angelina too, because they came into season 50, I think, playing performative Survivor, where they were just trying to be a pleasant person around camp and make connections when people actually wanted real talk, game talk, to try to move forward. I think it was a cool parallel to the conversation between Chrissy and Coach, and then the conversation between Emily and Angelina, and how both of them end with the person saying they're going to switch up their game. I think this is huge for both of their edits. I really didn't think there was any chance of Angelina going home this episode. We've seen so little of her. She was such a big character in David vs. Goliath, and we've seen very, very little of her. There's no way they were letting her go that early without showing any of her. Emily then goes into damage control mode, and she goes to Christian and says, "Christian, I've made a terrible mistake, and you're going to hate me. I need you to forgive me. I won't forgive myself." And then Christian's like, "Who'd you tell?" And she says, "Them," and then Christian's gasp was so funny. Why did she do this? I understand where he's coming from. They had a chance to have a secret idol and a secret ally, and both of those are just out in the open now. Christian says, "Even though this is all crazy, I have to forgive her. I think I can salvage this situation." Not once was this framed where Christian should have told her sooner, or Christian made a bad move for not telling her sooner. It was all about what Emily did, and then how Christian thinks he can salvage the situation and forgive her, which totally frames it from Christian's perspective. Christian's nerves are then calmed when he is told that Angelina is on the bottom of the original Vatu, and now that Emily's coming to him with this, he doesn't have to worry about Emily being suspicious about the David vs. Goliath trio because she needs them now. We head over to the new Kahlo tribe. Genevieve has a pretty good confessional about how she says she had a majority alliance on the original Vatu because she hit the ground running. And I think that's a good call. Hitting the ground running, especially in a returning player season, is usually the right move, as long as you don't go overboard with it like Jenna. Genevieve says something in this confessional that I think is really accurate. She said, "The first people that make you feel secure, you're gonna attach to." Then, this is where I think Genevieve might have gone a little bit too far. She starts saying she's offering people safety and letting it ride. She calls it her new and improved social game, but she still wants Aubrey gone. And her going around telling everyone that she wants Aubrey gone is what gets her in trouble. This, though, I think gives more context to that weird scene we saw with Genevieve and Aubrey in episode 1. Genevieve says that day 1, Aubrey comes up to her and says, "You're one of my favorite players. I'd love to play with you." Day 2, she ran around the beach telling everyone that Genevieve's a scary player. And then Genevieve says, day 3 or 4, she sat Genevieve down and told her, "I'm scared of you and how scary you are." And I think that is the conversation that we saw them having. Of hey, what's going on? And then they had that weird standoff thing. Genevieve finally gets unlucky when she tells Tiffany that she's going after Aubrey. Tiffany loves Aubrey and immediately goes to her with the information. And then Aubrey says in confessional, "Screw them all. Tiffany is like my survivor angel. She has my loyalty as far as it can go." Back over at Sela, we get Rizgod doing his classic R-I-Z-G-O-D Rizgod baby. He says, on paper, I might be screwed here. Vocalizing that possibility is not good for his edit. The phrasing of this next line I thought was interesting. He says, I need to know who's the right person to tell this info to. He doesn't say, I think I know exactly who to tell, or I think I know who to tell this info to. He says, I need to know who's the right person. I don't think this is a good sign for Rizzo. He then asks Charlie if he has talked to Maria since the end of Survivor 46. We get a flashback to Charlie losing. Rizzo says that Charlie is a player that's going to want redemption, so he wants to work with him. And he tells him about the Billie Eilish Boomerang Idol concept. This is another part that I thought was a really bad moment for Rizzo's future. Charlie says Rizzo gave him great info, and he says it was such a game-changing moment, but that it doesn't matter because of something that Rizzo said last night. And then this scene is so magnificent and amazing. Charlie is pissed off at Rizzo for saying that Sophie B from Survivor 49 was his best friend, but he voted for Savannah in the final 3. I thought it was funny when Charlie was like, maybe that's some baggage that I carry, but that's the reality of the situation. And that's such a good line because it doesn't matter why people are feeling things, whether it's their personal baggage or whatever. In Survivor, perception is reality, and what happens is what happens. And unfortunately for Rizzo, Charlie is pissed at Rizzo because of this one thing that he said, which, funnily enough, isn't even true from Rizzo. Yes, he voted for Savannah, but Savannah was his best friend in that season, not Sophie. So he did vote for his best friend, but he had to keep up the lie that he wasn't close to Savannah, which ended up biting him in the butt. Rick even says, are people going to call you a Maria after Rizzo brings it up? Rizzo just talks too much, man. I've always been somebody that says that every single word that you say during Survivor matters, because everything you say has some kind of impact on the people around you, whether you are aware of it or not. And sometimes I feel a little silly thinking of it that way, and that specifically, because it's such a minuscule thing where it's just a word or the way you phrase something that completely changes somebody's perspective on you. But then there's moments like this, where Charlie is specifically citing one sentence that Rizzo said that made him so upset that it wanted to vote him out no matter what. So I feel a little vindicated in that sense. Rizzo is definitely in some trouble if Sela loses. We get to the immunity challenge. A blindfold challenge. Ugh. I don't like watching people get hurt. Remember Kelly from Survivor Worlds Apart? She got her head bashed in during a blindfold challenge. Not fun. Rizzo gets hit on the head by a ring, and Jeff is shown laughing at it. They know this stuff's gonna happen. If there's a part when you're explaining the challenge, when you say, okay, now at this point, put both of your arms over your head because there's a large chance that you're going to get pelted in the head by a flying ring, then maybe you should rethink the challenge a little bit. I felt a little bad for Q and Ozzy. After they threw the ring off, it rolled really far, and it took them a while to find it. But I also noticed that is never shown as Christian's fault. They never said, like, oh, Christian should have been more observant and should have seen the ring. They just kind of cut to them finding it after a while. It's definitely Christian's fault, but we don't see that. They're protecting him, man. The part of this episode that annoyed me the most, Colby takes a massive hit on his head. He's stumbling. He could not get up for like 5 seconds. It was like a concussion level hit. It's kind of a disturbing clip. It looks like a rat that somehow got out of a rat trap. It's awful. Again, I was like, am I being ridiculous about the blindfolds? But then that happens. Stop doing the blindfold challenges, please. Sela takes first place. Kahlo takes second. Christian struggled with that puzzle calling more than I was expecting. They didn't get anywhere in that puzzle. They really showed at the end of the challenge, Christian being hard on himself. They're like, you need a minute? He's like, no, I'm good. And to me, that was the edit saying, don't hate on Christian for being bad at the challenge. He was doing it to himself already. He's got it taken care of. You can like him more. We're back to Vatu after the challenge loss. Christian is shown apologizing again, showing further that we as the audience should not hold this against him at all. We get to this scene that was wild at first, with Mike telling Q, Ozzy, and Steph that it would be hard to vote for one of the David vs. Goliath 3, and that he's probably just going to vote for Stephanie. That was surprising the first time I saw it. And we get a confessional from Stephanie saying, you want to keep the tribe strong? Me versus Angelina, it's a no-brainer. Why is she here on 50, playing the same way she played in season 10? Q states again that he doesn't have a vote, and then Stephanie lays out the way she currently sees the vote, which is the first concrete information about a vote that we have so far. So this is what Stephanie's seeing. Q does not have a vote. On her side is Stephanie, Ozzy, and Emily versus Christian, Angelina, and Mike, and that makes a tie. Christian's really not in the rest of the episode much. He says, I'm in the position right now, I'm not going to be running around telling people how to vote. And then we don't really see him at all until Tribal. But it's okay from an edit perspective because he gives us the reason that he's not in anything else. Mike tells Emily he actually wants to vote for Q even though he told them he was voting for Stephanie. Then, in a very Q moment, Q tells Mike to vote for him in order to protect Stephanie. I thought it was so funny. Mike immediately says, okay, but then I think he realizes that he said it too quickly because he immediately laughs and squirms around because he's like, oh, I hope he didn't notice that. The way Q sees it, Q has no vote. On his side is Emily, Stephanie, and Ozzy versus Christian and Angelina, now versus Mike voting for him. And that makes it so that it doesn't tie and his side wins out. It's kind of wild that Q thinks that Mike wouldn't go tell other people about this. Q also told Mike he has an extra vote, which is smart except for the fact that Ozzy is on his tribe and knows that Q lost his vote. Emily pitches voting Q to Ozzy. Ozzy says that he's nervous to vote Q because he doesn't want to go back to Tribal. Honestly, for Ozzy, I think that's fair because he's close to the bottom. I think Stephanie would still go first, but it's still a valid concern, I think. Emily says something that I think is really important for the future of her game. She says, Ozzy is an option, an opportunity to my game. Not anyone else's game, not Christian's game, my game. Which sounds great, and sounds like a really good confessional for Emily's edit. Except, for the last 2 episodes, we've seen so much evidence that Suri and Ozzy are number ones. So Ozzy's not an opportunity for Emily, Ozzy's an opportunity for Suri once they get connected again. At this point in the episode, it was seeming more and more like Q or maybe Stephanie was going. But then we get the moment with Emily saying she wants to get Q because he feels like he's getting one over on them. I was like, okay, a character that we're supposed to like is telling us this, so it's probably going to happen. And then the nail in the coffin for me was when Q put on the Q skirt. I was like, oh, he's gone. He's done. Cancel Christmas and Q skirt in the same episode. He's donezo. We get to Tribal. I didn't really notice until they said it, but Ozzy is winless this season. Even lost the fight for supplies. I was kind of surprised that we didn't get more of Q for his boot episode. I guess they didn't want to make it too obvious. We did get a lot of him in the first 2 episodes, so they probably just thought that was enough. Mike's voting confessional was really funny when he said, you told me to do this. I thought it was an interesting moment after Q shakes Ozzy's hand, where he looks at Stephanie, and Stephanie's like, oh, Q, reaches out to him. And then in that moment, Q's like, oh, we're good, I see y'all. Because he knew there was 1 vote against Angelina, and it wasn't his vote. So he was like, oh, okay, it was Stephanie. I know who was on my side, goodbye. That was a big blindside, though. He really didn't see that coming. Putting trust in Emily was a big mistake. It looks like Zach Brown's coming next episode, so buckle up, I guess. And that concludes episode 3 of Survivor. Who do you think's going next? Are you sad to see Q go? Let me know. Thank you all for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Bye-bye.